And then we could take the sending unit out and get fuel everywhere while we're doing it. Awesome. What's up guys, my name is Andy. In this video, I'm gonna be replacing the fuel sending unit in my 66 Mustang. This replacement is incredibly easy, so let's get right to it. Before we put it on the car, let's take a look at what we're getting real quick here. So this is just a Scott Drake unit. There's a lot of companies out there that make these. So you pick the company that you like, but they're all the same setup. And what you're gonna get in this kit is a new lock ring, and then there's a gasket in here that you're gonna wanna replace. And then this is the fuel sending unit. These things are incredibly simple. There's not much to them. The big thing is you're gonna wanna know that you get the right one for your car. There's two things you wanna make sure. The full to empty ohm reading on these sending units, I believe it's 10 to 73 on the early classic Mustangs. And also the fuel inlet size. This is a 5/16. I believe in 68 they went up to 3/8. Don't check me on that, but or you should check me on that. But for my car, I want a 5/16, and I got the right ohm reading on this. Now, but what we want to do before we put this in the car, you want to check the ohm reading on this before you put it in there, because to put it all in place and find out it's not working right, then you got to go through all this again. So let's do a real quick check on the reading here. So we're going to go to the ohms. So if we can put this so you guys can see it, so there's no glare from the lights. With this thing, this is all the way up. So this thing sits in the car like so, right? If this was the bottom of the gas tank, this is going to be towards the bottom, so it picks up all the fuel at the bottom. This would be empty, and then this up here would be full, right? So we move it so that it's all the way there, and okay, 8.3 ohms is what it said on there, so that's good. Again, we want it to be 10 to 73, so if you're within an ohm or two, it's gonna be fine. What you don't want it to be is like that, to say 0 or 20 or something like that, because then that would not be the right reading. So now we're gonna put it on, I'm gonna flip it around this way. There we go, okay. And then, same thing here, we put this on here, like that. 74.7 is what it says in there. Cool. So again, 73 empty, or in this case 74.7, which is fine, and that was 8.4, which is full. So that's good. The reason why, again, if this said it was like 50 or 100 ohms or something like that when it was down here, it's not going to give the proper reading, and the gas tank gauge is going to read incorrectly on your car. So now we're good to go there. So now we can go ahead and get it installed. Before you get started on this, you're going to want to get your car either up on some ramps or some jack stands to secure the car so that you can have enough space. Because what we need to do is we need to get a bucket underneath this drain right here to drain the fuel out of the tank. I've got less than a quarter tank of gas in here, which should be around, I don't know, 4 gallons or something like that, which is good. So this is something you're going to want to do after you get, you know, a low tank. You don't want to do it when it's full, because you're going to have a lot of fuel to drain out of there. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go after this fitting right here and take this hose off. And then we're gonna knock this ring out, and this thing just comes right out, and there's just one connection here for the wire. So it's pretty simple. But first, let's get it drained by taking this guy off here off the corner, drain the fuel out of the tank. And if we take the gas cap off, that'll help relieve the pressure as we empty the tank. All right, you're probably gonna spill some fuel everywhere, so maybe pull up your sleeves and get some towels ready. We're gonna use a 3/8 inch wrench here to just loosen this guy up. And make sure you put your bucket under here so you don't start spilling fuel everywhere. All right, guys, that's probably pretty good right there. So we'll thread this back in. The fuel level in my bucket, it's right about here. So that's a lot closer than I wanted it to be. I thought I had less gas. So again, be careful. You guys should probably do this with less than a quarter tank of gas so that you don't fill up one of these 5-gallon buckets. So let's get that tightened down and we'll move on to the next part. Next, we're gonna move on to this part right here. This little plug on the back of the sending unit just slides right off. We'll set that aside, and then we need to get this guy done. And there might be a little bit of fuel in this line here, so just a heads up on that. All right, now what we want to do is we want to knock this ring out. We want to twist it counterclockwise. We're just going to use a screwdriver and a hammer, and we're just going to get on the end of these tabs and just hit it, and it's going to twist it around and then make this thing, it'll break this thing free. And this little ring here is keyed, so you just need to get it past this point here and it should come off. And then we could take the sending unit out and get fuel everywhere while we're doing it. Awesome. Now here's the old sending unit. And notice how this gasket, see how it's on the back side? That's important because we're going to want to put that on the same side of the new one so it'll seal up against the gas tank before we put the lock ring on there. So here's the new guy. Notice this has a plastic float versus a, what is this, a brass float or whatever. That's not really going to matter for what we're doing here. The important thing is though that, like I said at the beginning, that the ohm reading is correct before you put this in place. All right, so we'll put this gasket guy on here. Bring him all the way down to the bottom. Make sure that's set on there good, and then put him in there and then put this guy on. Again, also, another thing too is this is a good chance to make sure you got the right size fuel outlet. 5/16 on a 60, I believe from 64 to 67, it's 5/16, and then in 68, I think they went up to 3/8. See all this residue on here, this stain? This had a fuel leak at one time, and I suspect what happened is that this wasn't tight enough, and maybe the previous owner or somebody, when they put this on there, they didn't fully seat this thing all the way down, and so it had fuel leak on here, and it just crystallized and dried up and made it all nasty. We can clean that off, but that's a good indicator if you've got a fuel leak in the back. All right, so now we're going to put the new guy in here. Again, make sure that the gasket is sitting on here, because we're going to need that to seal up against this surface right here. And when you put it in, you're going to have it so it's sitting down where it's going to be sitting like this in the car. This thing's going to be kind of pointing upwards a little bit, the fuel outlet, because you need to have this fuel filter piece here towards the bottom of the tank so we can pick up the fuel off the bottom. This part might be a little bit tricky, just making sure that gasket is sitting in the right spot when you put this up here. Also, these two little tabs right here, there's one here, one on this side, there's a little cutout on the ring here that they just need to sit in those tabs need to sit in that ring. And that helps clock this fuel sending unit in a certain position. Whew, okay. I found too that if you take the top part of the sending unit and stick it underneath this lip and then kind of pivot it downwards, you're making sure those tabs are lined up in the gas tank. It's a little bit of a tight fit, but that's what we want. We want this thing to be sealed and make sure that the gasket isn't pinched anywhere along here. Now the ring, put this on. And make sure again that this I'll show it with the other one. Remember, you've got these cutouts on here, and these cutouts need to go right underneath these three tabs. Then you can put on there and you can clock it clockwise to get this to go in place. And now we can drive this closed all the way. And there's little ridges on the ring here. You want to get this thing, there's little ridges on the three tabs. You want to get it past this little point here on each one of these. There we go. That's sealed up. And then we can hook the fuel line back onto this guy. and making sure that this hose clamp is below the barb on the pipe here. You can kind of see it bulging out a little bit right here. Just want to get it below the barb. And then this guy, and just slide. There's a little terminal inside here. You just press it on, you hear it kind of click on, done. All right. All right, guys, that's it. That's how you do a fuel sending unit in a classic Mustang. Very simple process. Something I should point out, while you're under there, that little piece of 5/16 fuel line, that stuff is cheap. You can saw how worn out the thing is. I'm gonna replace that before I put the fuel back in. It's one of those good maintenance things to do. While you're in there, just replace that little piece. What is that, like 3 or 4 inches long? You can probably buy a foot of it for a couple bucks at the parts store. So I would recommend replacing that while you're here. And then that's it. That's all it takes. These things are really easy to do. You can do it yourself. And this whole thing, not even a half an hour to do all this stuff. So I think you can do it. All right, guys, if you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. And if you subscribe, I appreciate it because it helps my channel out. And we'll see you in the next one.